Numbers chapter 24. When Balaam saw that it pleased the Lord to bless Israel, he did not go as he had done each time before, superstitiously to meet with omens and signs in the natural world, but he set his face toward the wilderness or desert. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he saw Israel abiding in their tents according to their tribes, and the Spirit of God came upon him. And he took up his figurative discourse and said, Balaam, son of Beor, the man whose eye is opened at last to see clearly the purposes and the will of God, he, Balaam, who hears the words of God, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down, but having his eyes opened and uncovered, he says, How attractive and considerable are your tents, O Jacob, and your tabernacles, O Israel. As valleys are they spread forth, as gardens by the riverside, as rare spice of lilies, which the Lord has planted, and as cedar trees beside the water. Israel shall pour water out of his own buckets, have his own sources of rich blessing and plenty, and his offspring shall dwell by many waters, and his king shall be higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brought Israel forth out of Egypt. Israel has strength like the wild ox. He shall eat up the nations, his enemies, crushing their bones and piercing them through with his arrows. He couched, he lay down as a lion, and as a lioness, who shall rouse him? Blessed of God is he who blesses you, who prays for and contributes to your welfare, and cursed of God is he who curses you, who in word, thought, or deed would bring harm upon you. Then Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam, and he smote his hands together. And Balak said to Balaam, I called you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have done nothing but bless them these 3 times. Therefore now go back where you belong, and do it in a hurry. I had intended to promote you to a great honor, but behold, the Lord has held you back from honor. Balaam said to Balak, Did I not say to your messengers, whom you sent to me, if Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the command of the Lord, to do either good or bad of my own will, but what the Lord says, that will I speak. And now, behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will tell you what this people Israel will do to your people Moab in the later days. And he took up his figurative discourse and said, Balaam, son of Beor, speaks. The man whose eye is opened speaks. He speaks who heard the words of God, and knew the knowledge of the Most High, who saw the vision of the Almighty falling down, but having his eyes opened and uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but he is not near. A star shall come forth out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel, and shall crush all the corners of Moab, and break down all the sons of Shith, Moab's sons of tumult. And Edom shall be taken as a possession. Mount Seir also shall be dispossessed, who were Israel's enemies, while Israel does valiantly. Out of Jacob shall one come having dominion, and shall destroy the remnant from the city. Balaam looked at Amalek, and took up his prophetic utterance, and said, Amalek is the foremost of the neighboring nations, but in his latter end he shall come to destruction. And he looked at the Kenites, and took up his prophetic utterance, and said, Strong is your dwelling place, and you set your nest in the rock. Nevertheless, the Kenites shall be wasted. How long shall Assyria, take you away captive? And he took up his prophetic speech and said, Alas, who shall live when God does this and establishes Assyria? But ships shall come from Kittim, Cyprus, and the greater part of the Mediterranean's east coast, and shall afflict Assyria and Eber, the Hebrews, certain Arabs, and descendants of Nahor, and he, the victor, also shall come to destruction. And Balaam rose up, returned to his place, and Balak also went his way.